Elara walked slowly through the foggy forest, her small baby wrapped tightly in a faded blanket, her hands trembling as she held a tiny shovel. The cold wind cut through her thin coat, making her shiver, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She looked down at her baby's pale face, thinking of the accident that had brought them here. She believed the child was too weak, too sick to survive, and her mind filled with despair. Tears ran down Elara's cheeks as she stepped over the roots of old trees. Her every step was heavy with sorrow, every sound, a snapping twig, a distant animal cry, made her flinch. The forest seemed alive, watching her, judging her, but she ignored it. Her only thought was what she must do. She had no choice. She thought she had to bury her child, to give the baby peace in a world that seemed cruel and unforgiving. She knelt on the damp ground and set the baby down gently. Her fingers shook as she gripped the shovel. The soil was cold and hard, resisting her, but she kept digging. Each scoop of earth felt like a hammer on her heart. Each motion was heavier than the last. Yet, she whispered words of apology to the baby. Her voice broke as she said, "I am sorry, little one, I am so sorry." Elara did not hear the soft steps behind her. Someone was moving quietly through the trees, someone who had been watching for a while, a human, strong and alert, yet cautious, hidden in the shadows. He saw the baby's chest rise and fall slowly, saw that life was still there. He knew he had to act, but he could not reveal himself too soon. He had to keep the mother calm, or risk her panicking. As Elara continued to dig, the wind carried a strange whisper through the trees. She paused and looked around, but saw nothing, only fog and darkness. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her hands trembled more. She felt hopeless, thinking of the child she might soon lose. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself grieve, letting herself imagine a future she feared would never come. The stranger crouched nearby, his eyes fixed on the baby. He could see the child was alive, though weak. He checked the surroundings for danger, every instinct alert. He knew he had only moments to act, yet he waited, letting Elara finish her task. Her sorrow was heavy, and he could not rush her. The baby's life depended on patience, on secrecy, on his careful plan. Elara wiped her face with the back of her hand, her eyes red and swollen. She whispered to the baby, "I wish things were different. I wish you could stay with me. I wish I could save you." Each word cut through her soul, and yet she kept digging. Her hands raw from the soil, her body ached, her mind burned with despair. The forest around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Little did Elara know, in the shadows of the foggy forest, her baby's life was not yet lost. A stranger, a silent guardian, was preparing to intervene, unseen, unheard, unseen by her tearful eyes. The night was full of fear and sorrow, but it was also full of hope, a hope Elara could not yet feel, a hope that would soon change everything. The stranger moved silently through the fog, his eyes never leaving the small baby lying on the cold ground. Every step was careful, calculated, as if the forest itself was watching him. He could see Elara's hands shaking as she dug, her face wet with tears. He knew he had to save the child, but he could not reveal himself yet, not until the right moment, or the mother might panic and make a mistake. He studied the baby closely, noting every shallow breath, every small movement. The child was weak, but alive. There was still hope, just enough, hope that he could grasp if he acted carefully. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, glowing device. Its light was soft but powerful, a tool from a future Elara could never imagine. It could heal, protect, even shield the baby from harm. Meanwhile, Elara continued her sorrowful task, unaware that someone was watching, someone who would not let her make the worst mistake of her life. Her grief was raw, her heart heavy, but the stranger knew that revealing himself too soon could frighten her, could make her run, could make the baby scream. He waited patiently, breathing slowly, every sense alert to danger. Suddenly, a branch cracked under a heavy foot nearby. The stranger froze. His instincts told him a creature or some wild animal might be approaching. He glanced at the baby, then back at the trees, ready to act in an instant. Elara flinched at the sound, her shovel pausing mid-dig. The forest seemed to tighten around them, the fog thickening, making the shadows darker. The stranger took a deep breath and moved closer, but still unseen. He placed a hand gently near the baby, testing the ground for danger. His mind raced with plans, each one faster and sharper than the last. He whispered softly, though only the wind could hear, "Stay strong, little one, help is here." The baby stirred slightly, as if hearing the voice, and the stranger felt a surge of hope. Elara paused, sensing something, a presence, but she shook her head, thinking it was just her fear. She bent over the grave, her tears falling onto the cold soil. She whispered, "I am sorry, I cannot save you." The stranger clenched his jaw, knowing he had to act soon. Time was running out, the forest full of dangers she could not see. He scanned the area quickly, noticing shadows moving, shapes shifting in the fog. There was no time for error, no room for hesitation. He had to move the baby to safety, to heal it before Elara finished digging, before any danger could strike. His heart pounded, every instinct screaming at him to act, but still, he waited for the perfect moment, patience as sharp as a blade. Then, with a careful step, he reached the baby, his hand hovering just above the blanket. He could feel the life beneath, fragile but real. He whispered again, "You are not alone, little one," and in that moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching, as a human and a child became connected by fate. Little did Elara know, as she wiped her face and prepared to lower the shovel, the stranger was already taking the first steps to save her child, silent, invisible, and determined, a hidden guardian in the shadows, ready to change everything. Elara's hands shook as she continued to dig, her heart heavy with grief. She did not know that the stranger's eyes followed her every movement. He stayed hidden in the shadows, keeping close to the baby, ready to act. The forest around them seemed to grow darker, more alive. Strange noises echoed through the trees, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, making the hairs on Elara's arms stand up. Suddenly, a low growl cut through the fog, making her freeze. Her eyes darted to the trees, searching for the source, but she saw nothing, only darkness and fog. The stranger stiffened, sensing danger. His hand moved closer to the baby, ready to shield it at a moment's notice. The growl came again, louder, sharper, and now it was closer than before. A large, shadowy creature stepped into the clearing, its eyes glowing faintly in the mist. Its teeth glinted as it hissed, and Elara stumbled backward, dropping the shovel. She cried out, her voice trembling with fear. The stranger acted immediately, stepping between the creature and the baby, his presence still unseen. He extended his glowing device, creating a barrier of light that pushed the creature back. The creature snarled and lunged, but the stranger's barrier held, shimmering brightly in the fog. Elara could only watch, confused and terrified. She did not understand what was happening, only that something had changed, that the danger she feared was real, and yet, the baby remained untouched, safe under the stranger's careful watch. Elara's eyes filled with hope and fear at the same time. She wanted to reach her child, but she could not see it clearly. The stranger moved swiftly, his body low, guiding the baby behind a large tree, hidden from view. Every step was tense, every breath a gamble. The forest seemed to close in, trying to trap them. The creature prowled, sniffing the air, but the stranger's clever movements kept the baby out of reach. He whispered softly to the child, "Stay quiet, little one, you are safe," and for a moment, the baby stirred, sensing the stranger's presence. The creature growled in frustration, pacing back and forth, but it could not get through the glowing barrier. Elara, still kneeling near the grave, felt a strange sense of relief. She could not explain why, but she felt the baby might still be alive. Something deep inside her told her not to give up, not yet. She wiped her tears and looked around cautiously, unsure what had just happened. The forest remained full of shadows, full of threats, but somehow, the baby was protected. The stranger kept his focus, his heart racing, knowing this close escape was only the beginning. He had bought time, but more dangers lurked, more obstacles waited in the dark. He could not fail, not now, not when the baby's life was in his hands. Little did Elara know, as she clutched her chest and whispered prayers into the foggy night, that her child was safe just a few steps away, shielded by a human she would never have expected, a guardian hidden in the shadows, ready to guide them both through the night. Elara's hands were still trembling as she slowly stood, looking around the foggy forest. She felt a strange presence nearby, something she could not explain. The air seemed heavier, charged with a feeling of both fear and hope. She took a cautious step forward, her eyes scanning the shadows, but all she saw were the trees and the mist swirling around them. Meanwhile, the stranger had moved the baby to a safer spot behind a thick cluster of bushes, out of sight from Elara, yet close enough to watch her. He checked the child's breathing carefully, seeing it grow steadier. The glowing device he carried pulsed softly, stabilizing the baby. It was a moment of relief, but he knew the mother had to discover the truth slowly, without shock, without panic. Elara crouched near the grave again, sensing movement in the fog. Something stirred, soft sounds of breathing, almost like whispers in the wind. She frowned, unsure if it was her imagination. She called out softly, "Hello? Is anyone there?" The voice of her own fear answered back, making her heart pound. The stranger stepped slightly closer, his presence still hidden. He saw the fear in her eyes and the sorrow etched on her face. He wanted to speak, to reveal himself, but he waited, knowing the right moment was coming. The baby stirred in the bushes, a tiny hand stretching, and the stranger whispered, "It's okay, little one, you are safe." Elara gasped softly, hearing the faint sound. She froze, her mind racing. Could it be? She leaned forward cautiously, peering into the fog, and then she noticed it. A small movement among the shadows, something alive, something protected. Her heart skipped, a mixture of hope and disbelief flooding her. She stood slowly, walking carefully toward the sound, her eyes scanning every inch of the ground. Every rustle of leaves made her jump, but she kept moving. She whispered to herself, "No, no, it cannot be, can it?" The forest seemed to hold its breath as she came closer, sensing that something miraculous had happened. The stranger watched quietly, letting her discover the clues, letting her hope grow. He saw her notice the soft blanket moving slightly, and her hands shook with anticipation. He stayed just far enough to remain unseen, but close enough to intervene if needed. His heart raced, each second stretching into eternity. Elara finally saw her baby, lying unharmed, breathing steadily. She froze, tears welling in her eyes. Her voice caught as she whispered, It's alive." She bent closer, almost afraid to touch the small, fragile body. The realization hit her. Someone, a stranger, had been watching, protecting, keeping her child alive. The forest seemed less dark now, the shadows less frightening. Elara felt a strange warmth, a hope she had not felt since the accident. The baby's small hand curled slightly, and she held it gently, as if afraid it would vanish. She looked around again, sensing the presence, and whispered, Who is helping us?" The stranger smiled faintly in the shadows, unseen, knowing that the mother was discovering the first pieces of the truth. The child was safe, the danger had passed, but the full revelation was yet to come. He stayed silent, letting the moment stretch, letting hope and suspense intertwine. Little did Elara know, as she held her baby close and whispered prayers of gratitude, that the stranger's full story, his true purpose, and the future that awaited them both, was about to unfold, a story that would change everything she thought she knew about fear, hope, and humanity. Elara held her baby close, her heart pounding with disbelief and relief. She could hardly believe her eyes. The small, fragile child, breathing steadily, unharmed, lay safely in her arms. She rocked the baby gently, tears streaming down her face, whispering soft words of love and apology. "I thought I lost you, but you're here." The forest around them seemed quieter now, as if it, too, were relieved, but then she sensed it, a presence, watching silently from the shadows. Her eyes searched the mist, her heart quickening. Who had saved her child? Who had been there all along? Slowly, a figure stepped out from the fog, tall and calm, yet strong. The stranger revealed himself fully for the first time, his face kind but serious. Elara gasped, startled, unsure what to feel. The child stirred in her arms, sensing the presence, and she looked up at the stranger, her voice trembling. You saved my baby." The stranger nodded, his eyes softening. "Yes, I did. You were not meant to lose your child tonight. I could not let that happen." Elara's hands shook as she looked at him, fear and gratitude mixing together. Why didn't you show yourself sooner?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He stepped closer, keeping a careful distance. "I had to be sure it was safe first. You were in so much pain, I could not risk startling you." The baby cooed softly, almost as if recognizing the stranger, and Elara's heart swelled with emotion. She realized that someone had given everything to protect her child, unseen, unknown, yet completely devoted. Elara knelt on the cold forest ground, still clutching her baby. Her tears fell freely, and her voice trembled as she said, I don't even know your name, but I am so grateful." The stranger smiled faintly, mysterious yet gentle. "Names do not matter tonight, what matters is that your child lives, and you are safe." For the first time since the accident, Elara felt hope, real hope, filling the emptiness she had carried for so long. The baby in her arms seemed lighter somehow, its small fingers curling around hers, and the forest, once dark and frightening, now felt like a place where miracles could happen. She looked at the stranger again, awe and gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, for saving my baby, for being there when I couldn't." The stranger nodded, and with a subtle gesture, he disappeared back into the fog, leaving Elara with her child and a sense of wonder she could never explain. Elara whispered softly to the baby, "See? The world is full of surprises, and sometimes, even in the darkest moments, someone will come for you." She held her child tightly, rocking gently, feeling a warmth she had almost forgotten, a promise that life could be saved, that hope could always find a way. And as the night slowly faded and the first stars appeared above the foggy forest, Elara knew that this was a moment she would never forget, a night when despair turned into hope, grief turned into relief, and humanity, even in the most hidden forms, had shown its strength. The story of the hidden guardian, the mother, and her saved child would remain in her heart forever, a reminder that courage, kindness, and love could appear in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, miracles do happen when we least expect them.